This week we're looking at location planning. So why might a company plan a new location? There's generally 4 reasons to plan a new location. The first is that you're expanding. So you have a successful business and now you want to move into other markets. So maybe your target market has been in central Alberta and now you want to meet the needs of those in northern Alberta, so you're going to have a second location up north. So it might be expansion related. You may have to relocate due to the depletion of resources. So think about it if you're a professional fisherman or woman. You're going to be where the fish are. So if there's a depletion of resources, if your fish are no longer in the area you used to be, you have to relocate. Same thing is true when we're looking at drilling for wells for natural gas. If there's no longer gas that's easily accessible, then we open up a new well and shutter the other one. You may have to relocate due to the costs of production. So it may be that it's gotten too expensive to operate where you're located and you need to move. So maybe you're going to move to a location where the lease for your building or your office space is cheaper, or maybe you're going to move to a different province or a different country where the labor is cheaper. Particularly in the US, companies often move from north to south because the southern states have less unions than the northern states. In Canada, we might see businesses leave their manufacturing in Canada and switch to Mexico, for example. We've seen that with some of Ford's manufacturing, and that is for cheaper labor costs. So it's not just labor, it's any other cost of production, but that might trigger a need for a new location. It's possible that you have too many locations already, and so by consolidating your locations, you can cut costs. So for example, we can look at Saputo Cheese. They used to have 2 plants here in Alberta, one in Wetaskiwin and one in Glenwood. And over the last couple of years, they've been consolidating the number of plants. So they closed the 2 in Alberta. Since then, they have closed some in Ontario. And the idea is if they have one big manufacturing plant, instead of a number of small ones, then the overhead can be spread out among your production line. So for example, instead of having administrators at all these different locations, we can have administrators at one location, and we wouldn't need as many of them. Or maybe we can take the cost of all those utilities for running that building, and now that one location is producing more, so that utility cost can be spread across instead of having 6 or 7 locations that each have separate utility bills. So the idea is that if we consolidate our locations, we can produce more in a single location, so take advantage of economies of scale and reduce our per unit costs. Now, as we're looking at a location, there's a number of things we have to do to decide on the location. So here we're looking at the location planning process. What are the steps to choosing a location? For whatever reason you're changing your location. So the first is we need to identify any important search parameters. What are we looking for in a location? So maybe we have some restrictions in terms of the amount of space. So as we're looking at different locations, we know we need a certain amount of parking spots. Olive Garden, for example, has a certain amount of parking spots they require that's specific to their business. That limits the locations they can go into. Maybe you need a location that has access to a rail line because you're doing a lot of shipping on trains, and so that's going to impact your decision about your location. So what are the important search parameters? What are we looking for in a location? Then we need to do some research. So we need to gather some information about possible sites. So what are our options is what we're looking for. Then we're going to eliminate some of the alternatives because they're not going to meet those important search parameters. So already we can eliminate some of the choices. For example, if you're Olive Garden and you have a requirement about parking spaces, you may eliminate a number of shopping centers because they just can't give you the appropriate number of parking spots. So right away, those are removed from the list. So we eliminate some alternatives and we get a short list. And this short list should really be about 3 or 4 sites. Now that we have those 3 or 4 sites, we need to look in more detail at them. So this would be visiting our new location. Come on, words. Seem to have lost my text. Let's see if we can't get that text back. Technical difficulties. There they are. All right. Let's open that back up again. Okay, so we identified important search parameters. So what are we looking for in a location? We gather the information about various sites. We eliminate those that don't meet those search parameters, and we narrow down the list to 3 or 4. At this point, we visit our sites. So this is your scouting. And this is so you can get a better understanding of really what that site is like and whether or not it would meet your needs. So once we've done that, we then evaluate the alternatives. So those on the list that are still on the list. And we make a selection. That last step of evaluating the alternatives is where we can bring in some tools from operations management. So what we're going to look at in later videos is we're going to look at what factors we might consider in that search parameter, step 1. So what might we be looking for? And then for that step 5 where we're evaluating the different alternatives, pardon all the scrolling, that's when we're going to look at different methods for how we might do that. And so there are 7 different methods in terms of helping you evaluate those alternatives and make a final selection, and that's what we're going to go through in the later videos. So check out the videos.